My sister set down her wine glass on that ridiculous marble island of hers, looked at me like I'd asked to bring livestock into her home, and said, "The little ones would just drag the whole feeling down, you know. It's not really a children's kind of afternoon." A children's birthday party that she was throwing for her own daughter. The somehow was not a children's kind of afternoon. I want you to understand that those words did more than sting. They peeled back 31 years of pretending, and underneath was something I'd been too scared to look at my whole life. I didn't know yet that saying one small word back to her, "no," would set fire to everything. I didn't know it would drag a secret my own husband had been quietly sitting on into the middle of our kitchen, and I sure as anything didn't know it would end 6 months later with my mother crying on my front porch, asking me to please let her back in. Before I tell you how all of it flipped, stick around. I want to know where you're listening from, because I think a lot of you have a sister like mine. My name doesn't matter much in the story, but my husband always called me Dee, so we'll go with that. I'm 31. We live in a normal 4-bedroom in a normal suburb in Ohio, the kind of place with a homeowners association that sends you a letter if your grass gets too long. I have 2 kids, Eli, who was 5, and Maeve, who was 3. And until the afternoon I'm telling you about, I was the one in my family who never made waves. The easy one, the reliable one. You know the type. The one whose job was to make everyone else comfortable, no matter the cost. My sister Sloane was the other kind. The son everyone orbited. 2 years older, prettier in the way that opens doors, and somehow always the most important person in any room she walked into. If Sloane was happy, the house was happy. If Sloane was upset, the rest of us rearranged our entire lives until she wasn't. That was just physics in our family. Nobody questioned it. I certainly never did. I'd hung up the phone that night before she said it to my face, but that conversation had ended the same way. She was hosting an Enchanted Garden's 6th birthday for her daughter Quinn at the country club my brother-in-law's bonuses paid for. White roses, a string quartet, a pastry table flown in from somewhere. And my kids, who adored her, were not invited. Not because of a guest count. Not because of money. Because Eli is loud and Maeve has sticky hands and they would, in Sloane's words, not photograph well. When I got off the phone, my hands were shaking. Not big, dramatic shaking. Just this small, steady tremor, the kind your body does when it's been holding something for a very long time. Wesley came into the kitchen and read my face in about half a second. He always could. That was the thing about my husband. To my family, I was furniture. To Wesley, I was a person. He set down his mug. "Hey, what happened?" "Sloane's not inviting the kids to Quinn's party," I said, and I hated how small my voice came out. I always sounded 8 years old when I talked about my sister. He frowned. "It's a 6-year-old's birthday. Our kids are her cousins." She said they don't fit the aesthetic. I tried to laugh and it came out wrong. She wants it Instagram perfect. Little kids are messy. Wesley got very still. "And what did you tell her?" And here's where I surprised myself, because for once I hadn't just folded. I told her if my kids aren't welcome, then neither am I. He looked at me like I'd grown an inch taller. "Good," he said. "Good for you, Dee." But I didn't feel good. I felt sick. I had this knot in my stomach I'd carried since I was a little girl, and it was pulling tight, because I knew exactly what was coming. I'd broken the rule. Sloane was going to be unhappy, which meant my mother was going to be furious, which meant the whole machine of my family was about to come at me to put me back in my place. I sat down at the table and looked at my hands, and I remembered being 10. I'd wanted one thing for my birthday, a sleepover, 3 friends, a pizza, a stack of rented movies. My mom said yes. Then 2 days before, Sloane decided she wanted to go to Cedar Point instead, and she cried until her face went blotchy and threatened to run away from home. And so my sleepover was canceled and we all went to the amusement park, where I spent my 10th birthday holding my mother's purse on a bench while Sloane rode every coaster with a friend she'd been allowed to bring. When I cried about it, my mother sighed and said, "Dee, don't make this harder than it has to be. Your sister's just sensitive. You're the strong one. You can handle it." The strong one, I wore that label for 3 decades before I understood it wasn't a compliment. It was an order. It meant, have no needs, take up no space. When I graduated high school with honors, my parents bought Sloane a used Civic because she felt left out of the attention, and I got a handshake and dinner at Applebee's. When Wesley proposed, Sloane announced she was pregnant 4 days later, and my engagement dinner turned into a baby name brainstorm while I ate cake in the corner of my own party, and I let all of it happen, every single time. I told myself that swallowing it was love, that keeping the peace was the kind thing to do. I feel guilty, I admitted to Wesley. He pulled out the chair next to me. Why? She's the one excluding our children. Because Eli's 5 and Maeve's 3. They're not going to understand that they weren't invited. They're just going to understand that they weren't wanted. Then let them understand that you and I never let that stand, he said. His voice was calm, but there was a hard edge under it. I didn't hear from him often. Wesley was a quiet man. He did something in finance, investments, he always said when people asked, and he mostly stayed out of my family's circus. He'd rub my back and let me vent and never make me feel stupid for going back for more. But that night he looked different. He looked done. It's Quinn's birthday, I said. I love that little girl. None of this is her fault. No, he agreed. And none of it's Eli's or Maeve's either. Sloane is teaching her own daughter that people are disposable if they don't match the decor. You want to help her teach that? I shook my head. I got up and went into the living room where my kids were. Eli was building a wobbling tower out of blocks and narrating it like a sportscaster, and Maeve was sitting there waiting, patient as a tiny demolition crew, to knock the whole thing down. They were loud. They were sticky. They had jelly on their faces from dinner, and they were, without exception, the most important people who had ever existed. Mommy, Eli said, not looking up. Are we gonna see Quinn soon? I made her a card. He held it up. He'd drawn a dinosaur eating a birthday cake, for his cousin, because he loved her. Something in my chest cracked clean down the middle. Not this weekend, bud, I said, forcing my voice level. But we're gonna do something really fun, just us. Why? Is Quinn sick? I could not tell him the truth. I could not look at my 5-year-old and say, no, your aunt has decided you aren't fancy enough to stand in her faux photographs. She's just busy, I lied. He shrugged and went back to his tower, easy as anything, and that's the moment that hardened something in me. Because he was easy. Just like I'd been. And I suddenly understood, in a way I never had before, that the thing I'd been telling myself was kindness was actually how the cruelty got passed down. I'd been taught my feelings didn't matter, and I'd been so well behaved about it that I was about to teach the same lesson to him. If I let my family treat my children like second-class guests, my children would grow up believing that's what they were. They'd grow up apologizing for taking up space. Like me. I went back into the kitchen. Wesley was watching me. I'm not going, I said, and I'm not pretending it's fine. Okay, he said simply. Then we make Saturday the best day they've ever had. Saturday, we took the kids to the Children's Science Museum 2 towns over. It was wonderful. Eli pressed every button he could reach, and Maeve fell in love with a giant fake heart you could walk through, and for a few hours I almost forgot. We got grilled cheese in the cafeteria, and they wore those little paper hats they hand out, and I pulled out my phone to take a picture because they looked so happy, so completely happy. And there was a notification waiting on the screen, a video call request from my mother, and a text underneath it, just wanting to say hi to my grandbabies. I should have known. I want to tell you I didn't see it coming, but the truth is some animal part of me knew. Hope is just a stubborn, stupid thing though, and I wanted so badly to believe that my mother had felt the wrongness of all this and was reaching out to make it right. So I answered. Her face filled the screen, and she was wearing a wide-brimmed hat, sun behind her, and I could hear music and laughter and the soft chime of glasses somewhere off camera. Hi, Mom, I said. Where are you? Oh, we are having such a lovely time, she chirped in that bright, performed voice she used when she was about to hurt you. Everyone keeps asking about you. And then she flipped the camera around. There it was, the white roses, the long linen tables, Sloane kneeling on the grass in a sundress, helping Quinn open a mountain of presents, my niece in a little lace dress that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. Look who it is, my mother called, swinging the phone toward Quinn. Say hi to your cousins. Quinn glanced at the screen distracted, said he, and turned back to her gifts. Eli and Maeve heard the voices and scrambled up onto the cafeteria bench, climbing into my lap. Is that Grandma? Eli said. Slemsy, hi Grandma. Oh, hello my darlings, my mother cooed. And then she did the cruelest thing I have ever watched a person do, and she did it slow and she did it smiling. She panned the camera around again. Look at Quinn's beautiful party. Look, there's a bounce house. See it? And the cake is 3 whole tiers. Isn't it wonderful? We miss you all so much. Ellie went very still in my lap. I watched it happen on his little face in real time. He saw the bounce house, he saw the cake. He saw two other cousins his age chasing each other across the lawn. Is that Quinn's birthday? He asked. His voice had gone thin and wobbly. It sure is, my mother said. It's her big day. Why aren't we there? Tears were already standing in his eyes. You said she was busy. And my mother's face came back on the screen, and she put on this mask of shock, this oh dear look, and she said, "Oh, sweetheart, didn't you explain it to them?" She was doing it on purpose. She was making me the villain in front of my own children. Mom, I said. Does Aunt Sloan not like us? Maeve asked, her little chin trembling. That one went straight through me like a blade. Of course she likes you, my mother sang. Mommy just decided to take you somewhere else today. That was Mommy's choice. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. I just stabbed the red button, but it was too late. The damage was already done and bleeding everywhere. Eli burst into tears. You lied, he screamed at me, loud enough that the whole cafeteria turned. Everybody's there! I want to go! I want to see the bounce house. And then Maeve started crying because Eli was crying, wailing that she wanted cake, and I sat there frozen with the phone in my hand like it was a live grenade, and I could not breathe. My mother had taken a 6-inch screen and used it to break my children's hearts on purpose, just to teach me a lesson. See what happens when you don't obey. Wesley stood up. I had never, in 8 years of marriage, seen his face do what it was doing. It wasn't loud. It was the opposite of loud. It was cold and it was final. Scooped Maeve up onto his hip, put a steady hand on Eli's shoulder. Hey buddy, it's okay, I've got you. It's not okay, Eli sobbed. They didn't want us. I looked up at my husband. She did that on purpose, I whispered. I know, he said. The drive home was the worst kind of quiet. The kids cried themselves to sleep within 20 minutes, and then it was just the hum of the tires and my own tears running down while I stared out the window, feeling like the single biggest failure of a mother in the state of Ohio. I hadn't protected them. I'd let the poison in through a phone screen because some part of me still wanted my mommy to love me. Wesley had both hands on the wheel and his knuckles were white. I'm sorry, I said. Don't, he said. Don't you dare apologize for them. We got home, carried the kids in, wiped their tear-streaked faces, and tucked them into bed even though it wasn't even 5 o'clock yet. When I came back downstairs, Wesley was standing at the kitchen counter, scrolling through something on his phone, jaw tight. That was the line, he said, without looking up. What? They hurt the kids. He set the phone down hard. I have let your family treat you like a doormat for years because, God help me, you let them and you told me it was your call to make. I hated it, but I respected it. But today they came for Eli and Maeve. They made a 3-year-old ask if her own aunt hates her. He looked at me and his eyes were doing that cold thing again. I'm done being passive about this, Dee. Then he went into his home office and shut the door. He never shut that door. I made myself a cup of tea I didn't drink and sat on the couch, replaying It's Mommy's Choice in my head until I wanted to scream. An hour passed. The office door opened. He'd changed. He wasn't in his weekend clothes anymore, the soft tee and the joggers. He had on a crisp white button-down, the kind he wore to the meetings he never talked about. He looked like a stranger and a very dangerous one. Come here a sec, he said. I need to tell you something. I followed him in. He sat behind the desk and gestured for me to take the chair across from it, like I was a client, and that scared me more than anything. There's something I never really walked you through, he said, partly because it didn't change our day-to-day life, and partly honestly because I didn't want your family knowing the details. You're scaring me. What is it? You know I work in private equity. Right. Investments. It's a little more than that. He folded his hands. The firm I started before I met you. We're the majority owner of Heartline Development. I blinked. Heartline, like the company building the whole new riverfront downtown, the convention center? That's the one. I own 60% of it. I'm the silent partner. My name's not on the signs, but nothing major moves without my signature. No major acquisition, no major contract. I stared at him. I knew we were comfortable, nice house, 2 reliable cars, a 401A. I never worried about. I thought my husband was a smart, well-paid manager. I did not know he owned the building cranes I drove past every day. Okay, I said slowly. Why are you telling me this tonight? Do you know who your brother-in-law works for? Garrett. Sloane's husband. He was a project director at an engineering firm, loud and proud about every deal he chased. Callaway and Stern, I said. Right. And do you know what Callaway and Stern has been chasing for the last 6 months? I shook my head. They're the frontrunner to win the structural and civil contract on the Heartline Riverfront project. It's a $40 million award. Multi-year. It would make Garrett a principal at that firm. His career made. Wesley turned his monitor toward me. There was a document open on the screen, a contract, Callaway and Stern and Heartline Development right there at the top. My team already recommended them. This is sitting on my desk waiting for my final signature. Garrett's been bragging about it for months. Spending money he hasn't earned yet. He paused. Probably how they paid for that party today. My mouth was open. I knew exactly what he meant because Garrett never shut up about the big one. Sloan had been redecorating, talking about a lake house. They'd been living 3 steps ahead of a check that hadn't cleared. Wesley said very quietly. Garrett stood in that yard today. He ate the food and drank the wine while our son cried into a grilled cheese in a museum cafeteria because his family decided he wasn't good enough to stand on their grass. He's part of that. He benefits from it. He reached for the mouse. And I don't do business with people who lack integrity. If a grown man can't find the spine to stop his wife from humiliating a couple of little kids, I'm not handing him a $40 million piece of my city. Wesley. My voice was shaking. That's Garrett's whole career. Sloan will lose her mind. Is that even legal? Can you just stop it? It's my money, he said calmly. And the contract has a character and conduct clause. Standard language. Usually it's there for fraud or a criminal record. Today it's there for cruelty. He moved the cursor over a red button on the screen. Decline. You want me to? I thought about Maeve's little chin trembling. Does Aunt Sloan not like us? I thought about 31 years of holding my mother's purse on a bench. And for once in my entire life I did not reach out to smooth it over to soften it to keep the peace. Do it, I said. He clicked. The screen blinked. Status, declined. Notification sent. Wesley leaned back. He looked, I swear, peaceful. It's done. It took about 9 minutes. He'd already picked up the phone and put it on speaker to call his CO, a man named Hollis, and I stood in the doorway listening to my husband talk in a voice I'd never heard him use, low and flat and entirely without apology. Hollis, I'm killing the Callaway and Stern Award. Send the formal notice to the partners tonight. Cite ethical and character concerns about the lead director. That language usually keeps people from asking follow-up questions. A tinny voice came back. Wheeze, you sure? We vetted them for months. The board's gonna have questions. It's 40 million. The numbers were never the problem, Wesley said, staring at the ceiling, relaxed in a way that genuinely unnerved me. The leadership is. I have personal knowledge of how the lead director conducts himself under pressure, and I won't put a tower in his hands. Terminate it tonight. He hung up. He turned the chair and saw me in the doorway and didn't look one bit guilty. You heard. I heard, I said. I walked in and sat on the edge of the desk. You just cost Garrett his promotion, maybe his job. Garrett cost Garrett his job, he said. This was never about a birthday party. It's about a pattern. Your family takes your kindness for weakness. They think because I'm quiet, I'm a pushover, and because you're nice, you're a doormat. And when you've got real power, you get a choice. You can use it to bully people the way your sister does. Or you can use it to protect the people who can't protect themselves. Today I used it for our kids. And then my phone started, a text from Garrett. What the hell did Wesley just do? Then? Pick up, then Sloan was calling, then my mother. It was a barrage, the screen lighting up over and over against the desks. They know, I said. Good, said Slee. I want to tell you I felt powerful in that moment. Mostly I felt sick, because I'd been trained since birth to be the one who answered, the one who fixed it, the one who absorbed everyone's panic so the family could stay comfortable. Now I was the cause of the panic. My hands were ice cold. But I picked up Garrett's call, because I knew if I didn't, they'd be on my doorstep banging on the door and waking my children, and I would burn the whole house down before I let them do that twice in one day. What is going on, Dee? Garrett was screaming, music and chaos behind him. I just got an email from Heartline. They pulled the contract. My boss is asking me what character concerns means. He's asking if I committed fraud. Lower your voice, Garrett, I said, and I was amazed at how steady it came out. Don't tell me what to do. Is this Wesley? I saw his name on some board years ago. I thought he was a consultant. Did he do this? I looked at Wesley. He nodded. He wanted them to know. Wesley is the majority shareholder of Heartline. Garrett, I said. Silence. Total, stunned silence. I could hear him doing the math. The nice house, the way my husband never talked about money, that quiet confidence that never needed anything from anyone. He killed the deal. Garrett finally whispered, over a kid's party? He killed it, I said. Because you and my sister decided my children weren't good enough to be in your presence and you stood there and let it happen. He decided that if our kids aren't good enough for your family, your firm isn't good enough for his company. You can't mix family with business, Garrett said, and his voice cracked. You made it personal the second you made my son cry, I said. You think actions don't have consequences? Here's the consequence. And I hung up. She came on Tuesday. It was raining, one of those gray Ohio afternoons, and Sloan showed up at my door without calling, mascara streaked, looking 10 years older than she had on Saturday. I almost didn't let her in. But Eli was at the top of the stairs watching, and I am not the kind of person who slams a door, so I stepped back and let her come into the kitchen. I'm sorry, she said before I could speak. And then, to my genuine shock, not about the money. I mean, I'm scared about the money, I won't lie. But I'm sorry I hurt Eli and Maeve. That was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. It sounded real. For the first time in 31 years, my sister apologized to me without an or somewhere in the sentence. I appreciate that, I said. But I'm not the one who needs to hear it, I know. Ellie crept down the stairs then, clutching a toy truck to his chest, watching her warily. And Sloan, my sister, who had never once in her life knelt for anyone, got down on the kitchen floor in her nice slacks so she was eye level with my son. Hi, Eli, she said, her voice shaking. I made a mistake last weekend. I should have invited you to Quinn's party. It wasn't because you're not cool. You're the coolest kid I know. It was because Aunt Sloan was being selfish and silly. I missed you there. Quinn missed you. He studied her the way kids do, with no mercy. So you do like us? I love you, she said and burst into tears, the real kind this time. I love you so much, and I'm so sorry I made you sad. He looked at me. I nodded. And my boy, who is better than every adult in this story put together, stepped forward and put his small hand on her shoulder. It's okay, Aunt Sloan, he said. Everybody makes mistakes. But next time, can I do the bounce house? She pulled him into a hug and sobbed yes into his hair. And then the front door opened, and Wesley walked in from work and stopped and took in the whole scene. Sloan scrambled to her feet. She looked terrified of him, which she should have. Wesley, I apologized to Dee and to Eli, she said. I heard, he said. His face gave away nothing. I know I messed up. I was cruel. I'm so sorry. We lost everything. Garrett's been let go. Please, is there any way you can fix it? And there it was. The apology had a price tag stapled to it the whole time. The scene with my son had been the down payment. She thought saying sorry was the currency to buy the contract back. The kitchen went very quiet. You could hear the rain. No, Wesley said. What? I can't do that. The deal's dead, Sloan. And I didn't kill it to punish you. I killed it because Garrett and his firm aren't the right partners for my company. That hasn't changed because you came here and cried. But I apologized. She was up out of the soft voice and back into the old one, fast, the entitled one I'd known my whole life. I did what you wanted. You apologized because you got caught, Wesley said evenly. And because you want the money back. That's not how trust works. It takes years to build and a second to break. You broke it on Saturday. You don't get to glue it back together on Tuesday. Garrett lost his job. We're going to lose the house. Then you'll downsize, Wesley said. You'll live a life you can actually afford. It might be the best thing that ever happens to you. How can you be so cruel? Dee, tell him. She expected me to crack. She always had. 31 years of muscle memory. Sloan's tears, Dee fixes it. And I looked at my sister and I saw the panic, but underneath it I saw the same old thing. She still believed, deep down, that she was owed a rescue. He's right, I said softly. She gasped like I'd slapped her. What? I forgive you, I do, and I mean it. I don't want to carry this around anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean there are no consequences. You and Garrett made your choices. He bragged about a check that hadn't cleared. You spent money you hadn't earned. You treated my family like dirt because you thought you didn't need us. And now you've found out you do. But needing us doesn't mean you get to use us. I'm not using you. You are, I said. If Wesley were a plumber, you wouldn't be standing in my kitchen. You're here for the check. She stared at the two of us and I watched it finally land, that the floor had permanently shifted under her. The bank was closed. The pressure valve she'd vented on her whole life was gone. "You're ruining my life," she whispered. "No," Wesley said. "We're just done paying for it." She left without slamming the door. She just clicked it shut, soft, and was gone. Garrett didn't get the job back. Callaway and Stern lost the contract and another firm took the riverfront. My sister and brother-in-law sold the big house and moved into a townhouse 2 suburbs over. A perfectly nice place, honestly, just not a place with a marble island. My mother told me about it in a clipped voice, like the downsizing was somehow my fault. The family was furious for a while. Cousins quietly stopped liking my posts. My dad grumbled about airing dirty laundry. But something shifted, and I felt it the very next Thanksgiving. Nobody made a comment about my off-the-rack sweater. Nobody talked over me when I told a story. When Wesley walked into the room, Garrett stood up and shook his hand, stiff and awkward and careful, but respectful. They tiptoed around me now, because I wasn't the easy one anymore. I was the woman with the quiet husband who could fold a skyscraper with a single phone call, and, more than that, I was the woman who'd finally respected herself enough to let him. 6 months after that, on a cool golden rust Sunday in October, we were out in the backyard. Eli and Maeve were raking leaves into a pile, which is to say they were jumping into it and scattering it everywhere and shrieking with joy. I had a mug of cider. Wesley was next to me with a book. My phone buzzed. It was, "Hey, we're taking Quinn to the apple orchard this afternoon. Kids can run around together. You guys want to come? No aesthetic requirements, no vibe check. Just mud and hay rides and a 6-year-old sticky hands." "Sloan invited us to the orchard," I told Wesley. He looked up over his glasses. "You want to go?" I thought about it. We weren't best friends. We probably never would be. The scar was real and I knew now exactly what she was capable of, and she knew exactly what I was. But she was trying, on my terms for once. "I think the kids would love it," I said. So we went. And as I watched my son sprint down a row of apple trees in a superhero cape he insisted on wearing. And in my old life I'd have worried, what will Sloan think? Will it ruin the photos? But this time I just told him to wear 2 capes if he wanted. I thought about that night in the kitchen, when the phone rang and I almost folded one more time. It turned out that no was the most powerful word I owned. No to the disrespect. No to the exclusion. No to being made small. I reached over and took my husband's hand. "Thank you," I said, "for teaching me that boundaries aren't punishments, that they're protection." He smiled without looking up from his book. "I didn't teach you that, Dee. You always knew it. You just needed somebody to give you permission to use it." And the truth is, the moment I stopped waiting for that permission and started giving it to myself, that's the day my whole life finally began.